I'm Kimberly Peck. I'm an environmental education specialist for Laurel Hill State Park, Cooser State Park, and Laurel Ridge State Park. And it's December, so it's a really great time to talk about evergreens. We've had some snow recently, although it's melting, the evergreens really stand out at that point. So we're going to talk about 4 different species that are really common here in Pennsylvania that you could find maybe in your backyard.
Go ahead, you can keep going.
All right. So this tree is actually kind of an ancient giant. It's a very, very large tree. It's known as the white pine. Some call it the Pennsylvania white pine. It's a really, really pretty tree. It has very, very soft needles. And when you look really closely, each place where the needle comes out, just like a broadleaf would connect to a tree, there's a little spot where it connects. Where it connects, you would see 5 needles. A white pine always has 5 needles coming off of the little section where it connects. They're soft and they blow very easily in the wind. When colonists were first in Pennsylvania, this tree became really important to them. It became really important to Britain in particular. There was no tree comparable to this in Europe. It's very tall. It is a pine, so it's also very, very, very lightweight, which is kind of interesting for the strength that it has. Very different from anything else. So this tree, growing tall, straight, lightweight, but strong, was the perfect tree for the Royal Navy to use for its masts. So many of the colonists looked to this tree as a sign of wealth, as a sign of something they sought after. And they sent it all over the world eventually, used for ship masts most of the time. So the name of the tree is a white pine. It is in the pine family. It does have a cone. This is the seed of the tree, but the seeds actually live inside the layers of the pine cone. It's a massive tree, but the cone is not huge. It will hang low on the branches and be green, and once it matures, it will open up and fall to the ground.
Start out here. Oh yeah, you can see the tiny cones.
Aren't they awesome?
They are so cool. Okay. Go ahead.
So this tree is kind of special to us here in Pennsylvania. This is the state tree of Pennsylvania. It's called the eastern hemlock. So really important to us here at Laurel Hill. It's a tree that grows usually in moist soils, grows really well in the shade, and is typically near water. Laurel Hill Lake is just behind us. This tree has flat needles that are very small. They're shiny green on top, and underneath they have 2 little white lines. This is where the tree breathes, in those little white lines. It has very tiny cones on it. So these are also pine cones. The hemlock is in the pine family. Really special to Pennsylvania. It's a neat tree when the snow does fall, because there are so many branches on this beautiful tree. There's often no snow right underneath the tree, but just around it. So a place that definitely we find that animals will hang out underneath. Really a good shelter tree. It's a really, really, really important tree to Pennsylvania. In many places, as I said, it grows near water and it helps to keep that water cool. Just as it kind of blocks out the snow, it also blocks out the sunlight over the stream. Cooler water means more oxygen in the water, so it really does produce healthy streams in Pennsylvania, which is really important for us.
Just want to look up the tree. This tree, we'll have to stand back from the road too and get a picture of it because it's huge.
So 2 more evergreens that you might not have expected to see today are not pines at all. They are laurels in a sense. This tree, or actually a shrub, is sometimes called great laurel, but it really isn't the correct name for it. This is wild rhododendron. Some folks call it big rhododendron. The leaves are evergreen on this tree, very shiny on top and kind of light and fuzzy on the bottom. They're long leaves and they are evergreen. They have antifreeze in them. And when it gets very, very cold, if you look closely at a rhododendron or a mountain laurel, they will actually droop down and curl up to save themselves from the sub-group freezing temperatures. So this is rhododendron. This is mountain laurel. very closely related. You can see the lower ones down here, but quite a bit different. The leaves are much smaller on this tree, on this shrub, I should say. They're much, much smaller. When you see them close together, you can really see the difference. This is rhododendron, this is mountain laurel. The blooms are also very different. Many of you are probably familiar with the rhododendron that blooms maybe in your backyard. It's a bright pink or a bright purple. It typically blooms just before Memorial Day here in the mountains, but that is not the same plant that we see here. When you have that rhododendron in your neighborhood or in your backyard that's bright pink or purple, about 2 weeks later, the mountain laurel will bloom. So typically about the second week of June, we see that here in the mountains. The mountain laurel blooms look like this. So they are a round flower, but they have little points around the edges. Some people compare it to a star. Very beautiful flower. The rhododendron looks very different. The wild rhododendron looks a lot like the one that blooms in your yard, but it is usually white or just slightly pink. There is always a little yellow spot with green dots inside. It almost looks like scales of a fish when you look closely. It has round edges, round petals going around it. So when you look at the two, you can really notice that they are actually very different flowers. So find a spot if you can where you see them growing closely together where you can compare.